Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of Enough to Keep Going. This is episode 271, but really what makes it special is our last show of the year, and hence it is our Gaming Superlative Award show. Yes, this is the time when every news outlet, gaming website, and personality is providing you with their games of the year. But here on Enough to Keep Going, we take a little different approach. Yes, we'll talk about some things that we might be game of the year, but we have lots of other awards to give out in terms of story, in terms of surprise, in terms of most fun. And because we are all family father figures here, at least in our better moments, we also have categories like family game night and other things. So sit back, enjoy, comment along with us, or leave us some comments as you listen to this down the road in terms of how we are right or wrong about any of our choices. But joining me here tonight is, as always, is Hamp and Towmaster 99. But because this is a very special episode, we are bringing back our fourth chair. Swissguard, how are you? Welcome back to the show, sir.
This is always my favorite episode of the year, but I'm still kind of recovering from the pathetic display by the New England Patriots on Monday Night Football. Or Sunday Night Football.
Sunday, right? Like,
yeah, I don't know what day it is.
I don't know. I thought that was a great pass right to the Raiders for the final touchdown of the game, rather than just take a knee and go into overtime. But, you know, I say that as a Packer fan, and this year we've had plenty of terrible displays. So without any further ado, let's dive right into our categories tonight. Our first category is biggest surprise. Whether this is a biggest surprise moment, plot twist, or just a surprise gaming experience or game itself. Towmaster 99, you are starting us off. What is your biggest surprise of 2022?
Well, probably not a big surprise to you guys, but for the audience, I picked Marvel Snap on this one. That's right, a mobile game of all things. Maybe not the first choice for most of us here on the show. But yeah, this game just kind of came out of nowhere for me. Like, I think I had just heard about it, I think a few days maybe before it came out or was about to be released. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll give it a try. And this is, card battle game. You got kind of like, Magic and Hearthstone and those other types of games. And I was never really into those games. I had tried Hearthstone back in the day, like just a little bit, just dabbled in it. I think the same thing with Magic. Obviously I play Pokemon, but I've never played the Pokemon card games. I never really tried them. And I just always thought it was just too much to memorize and stuff, especially going into something like Hearthstone, even like Pokemon Magic. There's so many cards throughout the years. It's obviously, there's probably like starter decks and stuff like that. But this one, I was able to get in, right when it came out, more or less. I think it was like a couple weeks later when I got to it. But the biggest thing, I think it was the Marvel side, just because, and I've mentioned this in the show, that I'm familiar with the characters, most of the characters. Some of them I have no idea, like Debris and Rock Slide. I'd never heard of those guys before, or the girl. But obviously, they're gonna have newer characters in there. But I know like Miss Marvel and some of the other newer, kind of more popular Miles Morales, Spider-Man. So, but just in general, like I knew the characters, and sometimes the powers that you get for the cards, it kind of makes sense for the characters. Other times I'm not so sure, but we can talk about that later, maybe next year. Same thing with the areas, like you have like New York, or you have like a Rainbow Bridge, or you have just all those Marvel characters or Marvel areas and locations that I kind of knew. So I don't have to like try to memorize as much, because I kind of know like what these things are. Once again, some of the areas are kind of weird, what their powers are, but that's, like I said, that's another matter. But yeah, this was my biggest surprise of this year, especially two things, because one, it's a card game, and then two, because it's a mobile game. Not that I haven't played mobile games. Obviously, I play Pokemon Go. I've been playing that for years now, but that's more of kind of a casual thing. But this game kind of just took over my gaming. Like I'd be playing this, and like I stopped playing No Man's Sky because of this when I was playing on the Switch when it came out, released on the Switch. So I was just playing this and just playing a few other things here and there, but I've kind of worked it into my routine now, so it's in there, so I get my time.
So, have you played? Has there been a day when you haven't played it?
Actually, yes. Yesterday was I think the first day in however long it's been, a month now, a month and a half, that I actually didn't play it just because I was so busy yesterday with doing other stuff and I didn't get a chance to play it. So there has been at least one day that I haven't played it at all, totally at all. So.
Well, yes, it is a surprise based on your gaming history. Maybe not a surprise to anybody who's listened to the show over the last 2 months, as you and I have both talked plenty about Marvel Snap. Another game that we have talked plenty about over the course of the time on Enough to Keep Going happens to be Hamp's surprise game of the year. So, Hamp, why don't you tell us what your surprise game is?
It was Destiny 2, and specifically the Witch Queen expansion. So, through the travails of last year, I had kind of fallen off of Destiny 2, and, I kind of gotten to a point where thinking about constantly going back to the story and having to refresh and remember where I was and what had happened and what made sense, and the manner in particular in which the campaigns had gotten so overly convoluted to where you had to chase off to the internet and Google and read up on how to even play the campaign, which I just think is kind of a ridiculous state of being in terms of design. The Witch Queen was really refreshing, and I played through that campaign probably 2.5 times. It was a great kind of harkening back to what was the first original Destiny DLC that the Taken King. It kind of felt like a return back to then, when the lore made sense and they kind of told you what the story was, without you having to be reliant upon the grimoire or having heard or read something on a Reddit or, met, geocache treasure hunters in Vermont to look up a, time capsule box of something. So it was really good. It was really refreshing. We had gotten past the weird wonkiness of void powers or whatever that was in that one weird chapter of Destiny 2. And it was pleasant to go back to. And in fact, I also went back and played a little bit of New Light. And I wound up playing, like I said, 2.5 times because I played primarily on PC, and I was on Radeon cards at the beginning of the year and switched back to, I was on half Radeon, half NVIDIA cards earlier in the year and played mostly on the Radeon cards. And then kind of about the spring when the market prices dropped out of the RTX 3000 cards, and it was fine to get back in the pool. I played again, on G4 Silicon. So it was a good experience. It was a harkening back. Right after that, though, it got right back to the same old business. So that did not last through the entire year, but for a single snapshot in time of about 2 months or whatever, 3 months or so, it was like good old Destiny 2 again.
Yeah, that campaign was really strong. The experience there. Very streamlined, very easy to segue into. All right, Swiss, you and I have talked plenty about Destiny 2 over the years, but you have a different surprise game, so why don't you tell us what it is?
I haven't actually played the surprise game, but it surprised me because of the enthusiasm displayed by my colleagues here, and that is Ollie Ollie World. So I know you guys have all talked about it at some point. I've seen it on statuses in Steam or on the Switch, and I mean it kind of looks cool, and it I have somewhat of an interest in it, but it's really been amplified simply due to the fact that you guys have enjoyed it so much, and being like a kind of as a side scroller kind of skateboardy experience. It never struck me as the type of game that would really capture the attention of E2KG, but it has. So that's why it's my surprise game.
Nice. Yes, it definitely, I think all three of us have played it at some point in time on a variety of different consoles. So throughout the year, it got a number of opportunities to be highlighted here on Enough to Keep Going. So I will say my surprise game of the year, since I already went out of order, since I'm not following along. My surprise game of the year is TMNT Shredder's Revenge. So this was a game that shouldn't really be. It was probably my most anticipated as well because it was Tribute Games, the developers of the GBA TMNT game, and .emu, the developers of Streets of Rage 4. The part that surprised me about it, though, is how much more I played it than the Cowabunga collection. And I was really looking forward to the Cowabunga collection, which I think is really strong. But it is strong in a nostalgia way, where Shredder's Revenge not only hits that nostalgia of plunking in quarters and playing with friends, but also has a deep combo system and has a lot more meat on the bones than those classic TMNT arcade games. So we are moving on to our next one, and Comic Relief. So this is our best Comic Relief moment, character, game, things like that. And Hamp, you are up because I had tried for some synergy here, but I messed it all up. So we'll see how it continues. But what was your Comic Relief moment or game?
We're probably going to hear about this game more. Well, I mean, we should know at this point. We will now have heard about this game more than once tonight. Mine was Ali World. It's just, I mean, I'm not a big, super huge humor guy. I'm a little bit of a curmudgeon. Frat boy humor just never really flies really well with me. I find it kind of not very humorous. And so video games in general, because they tend to follow that, frequently follow that pattern of humor. I just don't find a ton of games funny. And no one character kind of stood out to me as the comic relief this year, but Ali World, it's maybe not quite perfectly what I would really call funny, but it is charming. And so it's kind of charming funny in a certain kind of way. And maybe in some way, I feel like there are a lot of parallels. I need to go back and see if I voted for Disco Elysium in this category. What was it, 2 years ago? And that's what it is. It's just kind of, as our friend Swiss is very fond to say frequently, to find the whimsy, right? And it's just kind of very whimsical dialogue, and the characters talk in something very akin to kind of Simoleon, from The Sims. It's kind of a gibberish. It's not really a language. There's a lot of kind of emoting that in animations that the characters do. It's really surprising too when you. I was kind of chomping at the bit when Swiss mentioned it because I rolled credits on Ali World yesterday, which is no super huge feat. It's like a 5.5 hour game. But given that I'm somebody who doesn't often frequently, find a lot of games and had to change my play style and my approach to that game to get through the last level because of my typical obsession with trying to make a perfect run, I was like, that's not going to happen on this. And I was kind of obsessed about getting around to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 as well because I've kind of been bitten by that progression bug a little bit. I was like, but I want to finish this, and it doesn't need to be perfect. But that's like I said, that the characterization of those characters kind of comes off as a single plot device or single component of kind of the story. And there's not that much story there, but again, in that vein of the artsy kind of hipster, slant to the skating culture, right? It comes through in that, and then it's kind of delivered in that kind of whimsical fashion. So that's my pick, Ali World.
All right. Mine is another early 2022 game, and it is not for broadcast. It's a PC game, kind of full motion video. You're running basically the booth at a news studio. So you're splicing together, you're cutting camera feeds, you're bringing in different news stories. It's got some sarcasm. It's got some situational humor. It's not necessarily like laugh out loud, bend over backwards funny, but it was consistently making me smile and chuckling. And as I looked back through other games over the course of this year, this is the one that really felt like it was a sense of humor that I could come back to and enjoy the moments. And because of the full motion video-ness of it, I didn't see everything the first time through. And so I took a little moment to come back to it over the course of this month just to see if some of the humor held up, and it did. So that's Not for Broadcast by Not Games.
Is that a visual novel?
No, it's not. It's not really. I mean, it's a full motion video. I wouldn't put it in the visual novel aspect of it. It's more of, yeah, it is. It's telling you a story, or not your story, that you're kind of cutting it together because of the nature of being in the editing booth. And so there are some objectives. There's definitely some time issues in it. So it doesn't have that same kind of visual novel aspect that I would put alongside other types of visual novels where you're really just kind of moving through a story, making some dialogue choices, branching paths, things like that. Now, Not for Broadcast came out in early access in 2021, so I'm kind of bending the rules because the full game came out. But for this next one, we are really going to bend the rules. And Tao, I'm out of order here, but I'm going to go with bending the rules because you bent the rules for this category. So tell me what you got.
Yes, so problem is I didn't play a lot of new games this year. Not really. So I had to go back and pick something from the previous years, and I picked Immortal Phoenix Rising. So just like I think I picked it a couple years ago too, or maybe even last year. But you know, the banter between Zeus and Prometheus, I think it was. It's just hilarious. Those guys going back and forth, and you know, just kind of playing off each other, just kind of like an old timey comedy where they kind of just like taking ribs at each other, maybe subtly and not so subtly at times. But I just found it funny, and just because. Just I was expecting it too. Like I didn't think it was going to be a funny game. I thought it was just going to be kind of a serious, this is all Greek mythology, Roman mythology. So it's just going to be kind of like the newer. Can't remember the name of the movie now with Sam Worthington. It was the remake of Clash of the Titans. It kind of took itself a little bit too serious, I think. So that's what I thought it was going to be. But it ended up being kind of funny because of these two characters and just kind of other things that happen. Even in the main character you play, he or she, depending on what you pick, she can be kind of funny too. So it was a nice surprise there. Another surprise there.
I feel like this betting we may have to. I might pitch. We may have to revisit this next year with kind of our unspoken rules because Game Pass throws a wrench, right? So Immortals Phoenix Rising, not a new game, but it did show up in Game Pass in August, and so. Given Tao's that's becoming his primary consumption vector, some of the rules, such as they have been on the E2KG network, as much as you want to call them that, could use a revisit to take that into account.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's new when you play it, right? It's new for you. So. Swiss, you're going to help us round out this category and keep it within the year 2022. What was your choice for best comic relief?
I chose Splatoon 3, and when you were doing the lead up to Tau, I was very confused because I was next on the agenda and I was racking my brain. I was like, I thought this game released in September. I could have sworn it released in September. But yeah, so I think, like you said, DB, on Not for Broadcast, it's not something where it's laugh out loud funny, but I'm consistently smiling and chuckling to myself just as you see the various oddball characters that inhabit the Splatlands. And I really just like their goofy dad sense of humor with everything. I mean, they have one of the game modes is no, I can't even think of the name. When you're with Grizco and you have the salmon run, and you're collecting, yep. You're basically collecting salmon eggs for some boss that you don't see, but it's heavily implied that it's like a grizzly bear that just wants to eat salmon. So he's paying you to basically collect for him. So it's just a silly, joyful game, and I appreciate the sense of humor in it.
Nice. So before we head out to the next category, I'm going to take a moment here to see if anybody has any follow-up, any comments or questions on either of the first two categories here with comic relief and surprise. Okay, well, let's go back to breaking some rules. So, Tao, you are back on the mic with best story.
Yes, back on the mic and back with the same game I just talked about. So, Immortal Phoenix Rising once again, and I think I still haven't finished the game. I know I'm still going through it, but just kind of overall theme, like the mythology. I think I've talked about this too when I was first playing it back on the Switch. Was I was always interested in any kind of mythology, but especially like Greek and kind of Roman mythology with like Medusa and the centaurs, or all these other different kind of creatures and stuff like that. So it always just intrigued me. So that's why I'm one, because I jumped into the game because of that reason. But once again, like I said, it was a nice surprise. Just kind of there's actually a pretty decent story going through the game as it is. So that was my pick once again. Yes, I did bend the rules, but that's all right. We tend to do that here in E2 KG.
That's okay. I'm going to bend them for the next my choice here.
So
Go ahead.
I did want to ask so Tao. Now this may swim counter to what I said before, but you played Phoenix Rising when it came out. So did you buy it on Switch?
Originally, I bought it on Switch. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Gotcha.
Yeah. When it first came out.
So when you revisited, did you play it back on Switch or play it with a little better frame rate on Xbox?
Better graphics. I dabbled a little bit on Xbox, but I eventually just went back to Switch just because I had already started the story there. So I might revisit it at some point and try to play it a little bit differently. But for now, yeah, I'm still sticking with the Switch version.
Okay, so my Storycraft game is a game that came out on PC last year. I played the demo on Xbox actually 2 years ago at this point, I think, but it came out as a final release on console and Switch this February, and that game is Welcome to Elk. It's a small little indie studio triple topping. It's this, I would say, is more of a visual novel. It doesn't necessarily have any story paths, but it tells a very specific story. It's set on an island up in Denmark, Greenland, kind of in the Netherlands. But the piece that was moving for me is that every narrative piece that it tells, and it tells these little vignettes of stories, and all these little vignettes that it ends up weaving through are all real tales, are all things that happened. So as you're playing through the game, your character, there's a narrative device here where you're discovering bottles with stories in them. And each of those stories tell the real story of kind of the situation that you encountered in the game. So you kind of experience something that's very corollary in the game, and then you read the actual story of this person and this tragedy that happened, of their death, or a lot of the game. And actually this is where it tugged at the heartstrings. Most of the game stories are around dealing with death, the ramifications of death. There's a number of situations and stories that center around that. And one of the things that kind of probably in Act 2 of the game, it cuts to basically a video clip of somebody telling one of these stories of what happened to them and how they were accosted, or how they discovered a dead body, how they helped somebody heal. And so there's a number of these kind of personal narratives, little documentaries that are woven throughout the game. And in between, there's this kind of larger story of what's happening. But for a small little indie studio, Welcome to Elk really resonated in terms of kind of some emotional beats. And so that's why it's my story game of the year. All right, Swiss, you are up now with your Storycraft game for 2022.
Certainly not an indie title, but I chose God of War Ragnarok. So the new God of War games, I've become like a big fan. Having not really played much God of War in the past, I think I played I might have downloaded like years later the original God of War, but it had never been an interest of mine much. But this new like kind of Norse path that they've taken and really reinvesting in the story and Christopher Judge playing Kratos and all that, I think Santa Monica Studios done a great job. So I confess that I have like right over there the game sitting, but I haven't cracked it open just yet. So this is mostly based on hype, this pick, but I'm very excited to play it.
So let's segue over to Hamp, who his pick is not based on hype. So
Yeah, we will allow it, Swiss, because I can corroborate that my pick is also God of War Ragnarok. So, I mean, and we talked a little bit about this with God of War, right? Because particularly as parents, both Swiss, you and DBQ both mentioned that the game resonated with you. I mentioned that the game resonated with me a bit, but because I have daughters, The Last of Us resonates with me a little bit more. But I would say God of War Ragnarok probably, maybe because I'm older and the kids are like, I don't know. But I felt like pulls at the heartstrings a little bit more than God of War 2018 did. And in particular, because in God of War Ragnarok, you're seeing both Kratos and Atreus contend with the change, right? With the way things are so different, right? When a child is becoming a young adult, right? That's a very, I mean, you talk about the storycraft of Sony Santa Monica and God of War Ragnarok to me is not a perfect game. The arrival of that game, and I think I talked about it a little bit on the show, the arrival of that game in 2022 evokes a lot of questions that should be asked, in my opinion, in terms of game design and kind of what the state of the art is. Not state of the art, but like the state of the art. Just in terms of what we expect in terms of evolution. This is arguably the most powerful console generation that there's ever been. And there are questions that should be asked when, arguably the best game that's arrived in this generation doesn't necessarily do anything that mandates Gen 9 console power, right? I mean, other than graphical fidelity, God of War Ragnarok uses mechanics that play fine on a PlayStation 4. So that's not to take anything away from the game. That's just to say that there are questions that as a community, right, and as patrons of the art, right, we should ask ourselves about what we should expect next in the next evolution and wave of games. If I take a little bit off of the shine of God of War Ragnarok for the mechanical, the thing that Sony Santa Monica does exquisitely is it's pretty amazing what the what's the word I want to use, what the angle of departure is, right, from the relationship as it was depicted in God of War 2018 to now, right? The dynamic between not just Kratos and Atreus, but like between Kratos and Atreus and the world around them, right, and the other characters in the world is really it's like a well-aged scotch, just in terms of all the different flavors and all the nuances that are in there. Everything didn't come off well. I talked about I guess I'll stay away from spoilers. That one of the opening scenes with like a lot of Norse characters, I think the analogy I used, if I'd closed my eyes and walked in the room, I would have thought that I was hearing a scene from Grand Theft Auto 5. So not all of that came off well, but still, I think as a total package, right, the weaving of the story and the art that's displayed there from a narrative perspective is pretty amazing and second to none this year.
Excellent. Well, Hamp, stay on the mic because we are moving into most likely to be named Game of the Year by other media outlets. And I think we could just reiterate some of what you just said for this next one. But go ahead and tell us why you put God of War Ragnarok as your choice for most likely to be named Game of the Year.
Yeah, and I marked this vote down. You know, I was going through episodes on the Basement Radio Arcade podcast with that crew as well during the time period that I was making my votes. I did make my votes before the Game Awards show to make sure I wasn't influenced by those. At the time when I wrote this vote down, and I kept it consistent, even though I really changed my mind. The gaming media today really puts its emphasis on story, right? The games that are 90 something and above. Disco Elysium is a 90 something or above game, and that game has zero game mechanics to it, right? Gameplay mechanics to it. It is literally a text-based adventure that you could have played in the 1980s, right? And so, the artwork notwithstanding, and it's beautiful artwork, but the games media, and therefore what you see landing on the front page of Metacritic, really emphasize the story more than anything. No flight sim is going to get heavily critically lauded, even though those games might review well. No racing sim is going to get heavily lauded. No space sim is going to get heavily lauded. Even a 4X game, right, that gives you an amazing degree of provenance and player freedom, isn't going to sway the gaming media. And when that is kind of the centrifugal force that is kind of the taste setters, you wind up having a customer base, a consumer base that kind of does the same thing. And so my prediction with, Game of the Year, particularly when the comparison came down to God of War Ragnarok versus Elden Ring, was Elden Ring, amazing mechanics, ton of player provenance, an amazing number of builds and classes in that game, like in excess of what you can build in Skyrim. But what the gaming media was going to reward was that I felt was the thing that was the story and the cinematic display, and came off kind of like an MCU adventure. So surprisingly, that was not the pick that they all landed on in the TGAs. But this is about most likely to be Game of the Year in most media outlets. So we still have basically everyone else in the industry, IGN, GameSpot, and everyone else to pick their goatees, and I'm sticking with God of War Ragnarok.
Well, I think you made the case for the rest of us, as the three of us picked Elden Ring, and I'll say that in my choice here, it's very much what you laid out of the difference between doing something new, different, or evolving the mechanics. And I think that's where Elden Ring does that in a much greater scale and to a significance with an already kind of, the Soulsborne darling of the media. So to me, that's where Elden Ring falls in terms of why it hits on this list for me. Swiss and Tao, how about you? How did you end up with Elden Ring on your choice?
Mostly just due to chatter over the course of the year and the hype, and it was just like Elden Ring, when it hit, was such like a leviathan of coverage and media and high review scores. I thought it would be a pretty predictable choice for a lot of media outlets. So
yeah, pretty much the same for what you guys are saying too. But I think also, as much as I saw, like, God of War got all this praise, and they got tens, and everybody's talking about the story, and I guess kind of opposite of what a little bit of what Hamp was saying. That was, I kind of heard a little bit about the kind of the gameplay and stuff. Like, not that it was bad, but it was excuse me, kind of the samey in some of those stuff I was reading. Like, I didn't dive deep into it, but as much as everybody was saying it was, it was good, great story and all this, they kind of almost, like, I don't know how they could have gave it a 10 if the gameplay didn't evolve. And I'm sure there's some things that obviously went, they did more of, or they fixed, or did something different. But that was kind of the opposite end of what what I've seen, what I've heard, and not just like comments or anything, but actual in articles and stuff. So I don't know. So I kind of figured that everybody seems to just like, throughout the whole year, like, Elden Ring was always talked about, like, it would come up every once in a while. Just people would just bring it up. Even some of the sites will have like 3 months and 6 months, 9 months, their game of the year watch and all that stuff, and it was still coming up pretty much the whole year. So that was kind of the reason also that I was thinking about it.
You mentioned that you didn't understand how God of War Ragnarok received 10s when the game mechanics didn't evolve, and that's because the gaming media, who I also just dragged right in the course of this discussion, is very fickle about games that they say more of the same 6.5, 7.0, or more of the same that's exactly what we wanted. 10. So it's and I don't necessarily disagree with that, right? God of War had great gameplay mechanics, and I was perfectly fine, to see that again. The review score to me could be whatever it wants, up to a 10. I think that's acceptable when you talk about the whole package of the game. Like I said, what it leaves lingering is the question of, where is the art evolving, and is the art evolving, and should it be evolving here in Gen 9?
Yeah.
Hamp, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the reading and listening about God of War, in the second half of the game, there are kind of additions, evolutions to some of the mechanics above and beyond God of War 18.
There are different implementations, but it's the same engine. So I mean, there's not going to be like, it's a different animation or it's a different weapon. Like it's new in as much as you find a new weapon in Diablo 2, right? Like, I mean, it's not a leap to changing it to, like, the difference between Amazing Spider-Man and Miles Morales is an evolution, right? In a very short period of time. It's an evolution built in that same framework, but it exceeds the reach of the cup of God of War Ragnarok in my mind. Particularly because, the introduction of the new powers, yields different animation and yields different outcomes, right? And so it's very funny today. I was having a discussion about cyclomatic complexity, right? Like the number of inputs remained the same, the total number of outputs, right, for any given combat event wildly expanded, and that makes a significant increase in the complexity of what you see unfold in a combat scene, right, in the delta between Spider-Man and Miles Morales. I don't believe that that's equivalent, right, to the degree of change in God of War Ragnarok. Now, again, when I say things like that, I get the same thing that I got for, speaking my mind about problems I had with The Last of Us 2, and I get people, right, coming for me. So, again, I'm saying right here in this category, I expect this to be the game of the year at most outlets. I had, I still have more to play through God of War Ragnarok. It's absolutely, I'm having much more fun in God of War Ragnarok than I had in Elden Ring. Bar none, zero question. But right, from a critical perspective, there are things there to be discussed.
All right, well, let's move on from our gaming media outlets to general pop culture references. So this is our category of most likely to be mentioned in pop culture. And Swiss, you start off with a mobile game, which I think is an apt pick for this.
Yeah, I'm bending the rules slightly because it was released at the end of 2021, but it wasn't purchased by the New York Times until 2022 and went nuts, and that's Wordle. And I figured it would be good for the pop culture because this is a game that's gonna they post it daily on PC Gamer, but it's also played by people like of all walks of life. So it's it's the 5-letter kind of guessing game. I've got for 2022 over 300 days of Wordle. My friend and I literally every day text each other our solutions. So yeah, it's the New York Times put a lot of money into it for a reason. So I figured it was an apt pick for this one.
Nice. So my choice is also a mobile game, and it is one we've talked about, which is Marvel Snap. So I think that this hits a little pop culture because of the accessibility of it, the fact that it pulled in people like Tao, the fact that it's Marvel brings it up and open to all kinds of people, of all ages that have a connection to comics or the movies. And I think the other piece of this is we haven't even really touched on the pop culture impact of Marvel Snap yet, because they have not released the kind of competitive modes. There's not the player versus player, the battle your friends mode, which then opens it up into esports with being able to do tournaments and all kinds of other pieces, where Marvel Snap is looking to have, I think, a very strong 2023.
Yeah, there's not even any leaderboards right now, which I think is on the roadmap, I believe, further down the line. So, yeah, they got a lot they can put into the game.
All right. So, Hamp, you are back on the mic. What is your pick for most likely to be mentioned in pop culture?
My pick was The Last of Us. HBO. It is on HBO Max, right? HBO, and I guess by way of, they must have participated. Sony Pictures, and even PlayStation, right, Studios, have done a really good job marketing that upcoming series, and people are just kind of weird in how they slag and drag and try and take things down at the knees. And there was a lot of hatred and vitriol, right, about the Last of Us remake. Who asked for this? We don't need it. And as I engage vigorously with yet another individual today on Twitter, people lack the self-awareness to understand that no one of them is as a singular entity, is the market in its entirety. Nor are the 3% of gamers that are on Twitter representative and reflective of the entire gaming market. And so, while a bunch of you guys may jump in a bunch of spaces and convince yourselves that the way you think is the way that all gamers think, that is statistically not the case. And so, The Last of Us remake coming out in the fall worked really wonderfully with the release of the full-length trailer that came along. I think it came out just after it was released. So, and that show's not coming out till next year, but in a world right now where there are popular TV properties that people like, but there's not a ton of TV properties out there that are new, or bringing something to the screen for the first time. The Last of Us plays really well, and it plays really well with the HBO Max streaming strategy. So I think it's the one, and people, normals will look at it and go, oh, holy crap, there's a video game based on that. But I think it's going to play out, just as kind of Sony planned and intended it. And that's the one that I think that'll resonate with people.
I think that's a solid pick there, and a great rationale for why it will cross over into general culture because of the TV show. So, Tao, you are last on the list here. I think your game has crossed over into general culture for almost 19 years now. And if I'm watching any NFL game or sports broadcast, chances are I might see some type of announcement or ad for it as well.
Yeah, so I did the safe pick. I think the safest of picks on this one with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 / Warzone 2. Just because, obviously, like you mentioned, like you're gonna see it on, not only like commercials and stuff, but there's even been times in the past where they might have, I don't want to say announced, but they kind of showed off like in a commercial or a special, thing where a mode or something like that. And obviously, how big it was when it released. It had like one of the biggest openings for a Call of Duty, at least a weekend, possibly even the week. I think it was, if I remember correctly. So, and of course, when you see that and when you hear about that, there's always a comparison with movies. So, that might, dip over into like, all the entertainment shows and stuff like that, saying, oh, hey, this video game, beat out a movie or movies for the year or for, however, whatever the movie might have been in at that time. So, it's always going to be, in the culture, I think, and probably still going forward.
Okay, Tao, stay on the mic, because now it's time to hear about your most disappointing game experience.
Yes, my most disappointing gaming experience was Call of Duty, once again, Warzone 2. Not so much because I didn't like the game, so I did, but it was more because I can't find anybody to play it with right now. Like, anybody who I had played with it before that tried it, and it just didn't. It didn't seem to click with them this time around. They just felt that it was kind of visually and just kind of the gameplay too just was too off or too different for them. So like my one friend, the one I was playing with, like I've been playing with now for years, he was like, excuse me, he just felt that, like, I don't know if it was something with like the animation or just like what it looked like just kind of was throwing him off. He felt it was like kind of slow, which I actually thought was a little bit faster than most Call of Duties out there. At least, well, I guess there's only been a couple of Battle Royale Call of Duties, but I thought it was pretty on par with at least Blackout and a little bit faster than the first Warzone as far as moving it and stuff like that. But he just couldn't get into it, so I kind of fell off it just because I don't have anybody to play with. I don't really like to play Warzone by myself. Like any other Battle Royale, I'll jump into solos and stuff like that. But there's something with the Call of Duty ones that I just can't do it. And I hate to say it, but the randoms are they just kill me, like literally, because they don't work together obviously like a team, like so. And no one still no one barely talks now because they're probably in. They're just trying to do solos too, or maybe they're with a party of maybe just two. They just jump into a 3 or a squad or something like that. So and I'm left out because you can't hear the party talk. So yeah, unfortunately that's the most disappointing of game experience this year.
So my disappointing game experience or game was one that I pre-ordered because I wanted to support the developer, because I wanted the franchise to come back, because I enjoyed the humor of it so much over time. And that is Volition, and that is Saints Row. And it was, after the patches later in the fall, it's become an okay game. It launched in August, earlier than it should have, in terms of the stability of it. But even as it was patched and ran better, it was just kind of milquetoast. It was not, didn't have the, and maybe the, what was edgy humor in 2013 would not fly in 2022. But it didn't necessarily even capture some of that same kind of whimsy and lightheartedness in the midst of the chaos that are the Saints. So to me, that was my disappointing game experience of this year. Hamp, how about you? What was your most disappointing game experience?
Mine, and I don't want to make too much of an ado about this. Mine was Total War Warhammer 3, which I haven't gone into a huge amount, but I am playing that. I'm playing it on PC because that's the only place it is. It's just, I thought that, again, right, running this on an RTX 3000 series card, I was expecting a leap beyond the graphical fidelity of Total War. I can't remember. Swiss, you probably remember. What was the... Oh, Total War Three Kingdoms. Yeah, yep. I was just expecting a significant jump in graphical fidelity, a character art, character units on the battlefield, and there's really not. It's not much of a leap at all. There's been a change in generation of hardware. I think this is being done. I can't remember which studio is doing this, but it's different. I think it's a different studio than the Three Kingdoms studio. But for many reasons, I was just expecting a little more bling bling, a little more chrome. Particularly again, running it on the cards that are very expensive that I was able to get my hands on. It was just kind of a letdown. Let the hot air out of the balloon. When I went to play it and just kind of didn't see the things that I was hoping for to kind of keep me engaged, at least from that perspective.
All right, so we had 2 AAA games, Total War, somewhere AAA, mid-tier, and now, Swiss, you're going to talk to us about a small indie game that was your disappointment. So I'm glad you're here because I don't think we've talked about El Hijo at all this year. So tell us what it is and how it ends up on your list here as a disappointment.
Yeah, my pick was El Hijo, a Wild West tale. And yeah, I didn't, in some of these, I confess I haven't played. This is one that I played, so it's like my personal biggest disappointment for the year, and mostly that is due probably to perhaps unrealistic expectations on my part. What we had it was a game that's is like a stealth game where a little boy kind of sneaking through Wild West towns and out of like old Adobe monastery type buildings and stuff, and it was the hype was that is inspired by like the old Sergio Leone like spaghetti westerns, which I love, yeah, I've always enjoyed like the stealth action type games, like Metal Gear Solid and stuff. But what it ended up being was like the scene, the area in Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time when you're sneaking into the castle and you just kind of have to go around the guards right before you get to Princess Zelda, but stretched out to an entire game. So it was completely shallow. And I had hoped that the style and there'd be a little bit more depth and maybe just that type of game if there's like no combat layer to go along with it. There's just not enough there. So I had this game wishlisted for a couple of years since it was announced at some indie showcase or something, and I played it one afternoon and never picked it up again.
Thanks, Swiss. All right, Hamp, you are back on the mic. We are now moving into our Wretched Hive of Scum and Villainy. This is our emblematic sleazy business practices. We started this category back in 2017 for Battlefront 2, I believe, and all of the drama that surrounded that. Last year, I think we had a unanimous pick with Activision Blizzard and all their harassment and practice and lawsuits against from the state of California and investigations. This year we are all over the map on this one. So start us off, Hamp, in terms of where you what you would like to highlight as bad business practice or just cringy, rub you the wrong way.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear everybody else's picks because I think that we're all over the map because I don't really know that there was a ton of people sticking their foot in the cow patty this year, other than Activision kind of continuing to be Activision, which unfortunately kind of got buried underneath the whole merger acquisition between them and Microsoft. Ubisoft also had some bad shine on it, but the one I wound up picking was Unity because if there's one sure way to get your foot in it these days, it's to mention NFTs. And is it John Riccitiello, I think, former CEO of EA Games,
Riccitiello,
is over at Unity now, and kind of mentioned some comments that didn't get him. It seemed like he was trying to pull a Tim Sweeney, and or a David Jaffe, and Randy Pitchford kind of say some explosive things to try and draw a lot of attention. And I'm like, John, maybe I don't think that's the game you need to play. So he mentioned that basically, I think what he said was basically if developers aren't doing microtransactions and kind of doing everything that they can to squeeze every penny out of their customers, then they don't know what they're doing in business or something to that effect. He walked those statements back a couple of weeks later, but that was the jump off the diving board. That was the triple Lindy that landed the biggest splash for me, for this year.
All right, Swiss, you're up next.
I selected Polyphony Digital for Gran Turismo 7, and so when the game kind of launched, and this is another one of those games. I'm not a big racing fan, but every now and then, I'll get the bug and I'll want to play something, and GT7 has been on my radar, and when it released, it got really good reviews, which was nice, and then it came out, and people were complaining about the microtransactions, I think, because you have to buy credit packs in order to get cars instead of just being able to buy individual cars, and the prices would have gone up. But then there was another debacle where there was some you have to be online all the time to play even single player, and then they had a problem on their server, so it was out like of commission for like for everyone for like 24 hours or something, and they patched the game, and when the game came back, they had actually like made it harder to get additional cars. Like they adjusted the microtransaction rate of return, so to speak, against the gaming public. So there was a lot of I think over time they've continued to balance it, and I think people are less angry now, but just the whole, they waited till after the reviews came out before they really adjusted how the microtransactions they wanted it to work, which to me was a little bit sleazy. And in the grand scheme of things, like, I know it's like Hamp said, it's not there wasn't like a huge story this year, but from like just a general gaming annoyance perspective, I think that was a decent selection.
Yeah, I remember that news cycle with Polyphony and the broken servers and how much it really kind of took the shine off that game.
I mean, Gran Turismo 7 is a gorgeous looking game. It's beautiful. Those are shots fired to pick that one for the Hive of Scum and Villainy award. But Gran Turismo, it's Sony. It's Sony and it's Polyphony Digital. Like, I don't understand why Polyphony Digital gets away with the things that it gets away with. Releasing GT7 in a lot of ways, based on the things, Swiss brought up. But also just the convoluted manner of the campaign where, the difference between those two games, between Forza Horizon and Gran Turismo 7, is Forza Horizon, I feel like just allows me to have fun. Whereas Gran Turismo constantly puts scaffolding and wire work and shadows right between me and just getting to the racetrack, and then invokes a bunch of repetition on top of that. And I don't get it, and I don't understand why. So on those merits alone, I have no problems with it being picked out and called out for this.
Well, I'm going to keep the shots fired because my choice is Sony. And I alluded to this last week, right? This is Sony because of their continued advocacy of how the Activision Blizzard merger is crippling for them. That for a developer publisher company that is outselling their closest competition by 2-1 for the last 2 generations, to claim that one game with Call of Duty provides them an unfair monopoly, I feel is competitively misrepresented. So regardless of how you feel about the Activision Blizzard Microsoft merger and the monopolistic competitiveness of it, I think it is a far stretch for Sony to say that this one game would cripple their systems that they're already, where they have a dominant market share and have for the last 8 years at this point.
I don't agree with you that they're the Wretched Hive of Scum. However, I can't in due face sit here and say that some of their arguments have not been hypocritical. But I don't, given your responsibility that you have to your shareholders, I don't know that there's anything else that they could do. But yes, I mean, I look at some of their arguments and I go, well, that's not really the case. But,
fair enough, right? Like I can understand that from a shareholder perspective. Like, yes, you need to get out here to try to stop that. Whether or not how they're trying to stop it is realistic and honest to what would happen for them down the road is a whole different piece. But Tao, why don't you take us home in this category? And it actually kind of brings us back around to multiple things that we've talked about, not only already on this show, but the impetus of this category to begin with.
Yes, so my choice, while surprising, I think, for a lot of people, like I've enjoyed the Pokemon games, and I've enjoyed the recent Pokemon games, Scarlet and Violet, but I have to give this to Game Freak for this year for releasing. I don't want to say broken game, but it's for some people it's seems to have a lot of troubles with it. Technically, gameplay wise, I think most people agree the gameplay is fine. I mean, it's Pokemon. You're just basically watching Pokemon battle, but I think it's more of the just the technical issues that it's been having. And I don't know, maybe if they're having trouble with like the Switch hardware and trying to do what they want to do. Obviously, Switch is it's getting along in the years. So, or if it's just maybe they're trying to rush it out. I mean, they've had 3 Pokemon games now within a year, a little over a year. Maybe trying to do too much all at once because obviously I mean, I'm sure they have like multiple teams, but still, I mean, they probably still have to collaborate and different things here and there. So my choice is Game Freak for this year.
That was my initial choice before I started going back, and for the same reasons that you spelled out, Tao, like just pushing out, like just vomiting out Pokemon games, and then they're not up to the quality that they should be. So that, but then I went back through the news and I tried to, and I found I remembered the Polyphony Digital story, so I decided to go with that one.
All right. So if you are following the narrative arc of this show, we start off high, we dip down here with some negative awards, and we build our way back up to some positiveness. And so we're on that upward trajectory here. So now, after moving out of our negative pieces, here is an award for the developer or publisher with the best attitude in the face of adversity. And this has taken on a lot of different roles over the years. So, and I think though, this year is the first time we have one acknowledgement that is not actually a game developer or publisher. So Hamp, why don't you give us your pick here for face of adversity?
Yeah, that's you have the agenda kind of oriented the way that I set up my batting average, my batting lineup in MLB The Show. So I picked G4 TV, and the reason is one, because I didn't know, again, I'll be curious to hear everybody else's picks. I don't know that there was a developer that stuck out to me as really kind of digging their heels in, putting shoulder to grindstone and really kind of pulling something out. Maybe I could have said that about Rockstar, because I mentioned the other night that they turned the remake around like in a matter of months, which is something that every developer can't do. But that was also a situation that Rockstar themselves allowed to happen, so maybe I take a little shine off that. I picked G4 TV, and the reason I did that was, again, they didn't do anything particularly amazing, but just the manner in which I felt like that was handled was as professional as it could be. There were a few things kind of thrown out there on social media about the way it was handled. But, in comparison to when, large swaths of people that I've seen, got laid off of IGN, getting laid off of GameSpot, and getting laid off from Game Informer in particular, I felt there was, if not on social media, then in like follow-on podcasts that I heard, former editors and stuff around, a handful of pot shots, right, taken at their former employer, which I can understand totally. However, right, you work in the industry, and people remember, right, there are some industries where we understand the unwritten rules that when things go down badly with an employer, you kind of keep those things mostly private, right? And then you talk about them, years after the fact, right? Or after there's some distance, right? To maintain some semblance of professionalism. And I think a lot of other places, the entertainment industry, I think behaves under those rules, voice actress for Bayonetta notwithstanding. But I think, everybody who got laid off with the exception of Frost, kind of handle it pretty professionally, right, in comparison to some other outlets where I've seen that happen before.
All right. So, Swiss, your choice here is Andrew Schuldes, and he's the developer of Tunic and the entire Tunic team. So tell us why you chose this development team.
I'll be honest. This was one of the more difficult ones to pick. Like some years, it's pretty. Like there's one that seems to just rise to the top. Like they get criticized for the release, and then they just keep hacking away at it, and they kind of make it like they put their passion into it, and the game ends up like. I always think Hello Games is probably the most emblematic studio for this particular category, but this one was a little different. I chose Tunic Team just because I respect when a single developer, and I know like towards the end he kind of like helped he contracted out some of the stuff, but when a single developer just really has the passion project and finishes it and then meets some level of success, I want to tip my hat to their effort. Not only that, they released it like right in like the Elden Ring window, so it wasn't like they were getting like massive indie love from like a slow weekend in the gaming media. So just wanted to say well done to a single developer living their dream.
Yeah, I think the depth and nuance of Tunic and the whole way that you kind of unearth the language and the little game manual that comes through the game is really just an achievement for that developer. So yeah, nice job. Okay, so my choice was one that I had put down kind of mentally late summer, and it only got stronger as the fall went on. And my choice here is Digital Eclipse. That Digital Eclipse, with their release of the Cowabunga collection and hearing some of the people that work in that studio out on a variety of podcasts and just kind of going through what was all included within the Cowabunga collection in terms of getting scans of ads from magazines from multiple different countries and languages, but going back and getting design documents and hearing someone like Chris Kohler talk about, playing 6 Degrees of Separation to try to find somebody at Konami who still held on to those design documents. But then with the Atari 50 collection, really Digital Eclipse sealed it for me in terms of the amount of work they put in, not only in making some of those games run, where they had to kind of basically construct a Jaguar emulator to get, since there's not a really solid Jaguar emulator scene that runs consistently, they had to kind of build their own in that process. But then going back and unearthing old MIT student videos for Nolan Bushnell and getting a whole variety of interviews and people that are trying to track down people and get stories that are not necessarily just whitewashed, but hearing a lot of stories that uncover some of Atari's history, both good and bad, and having the ability to put that all together in a collection is where I think Digital Eclipse as a studio really went the extra mile in terms of what kind of preservation of game collections could be. All right, so moving on, and I think moving on from talking about a studio that specializes in preservation and ports and remasters to our next category here, which is a new lease on life or best ported game. This one, I may have a recency bias, but I was so sure that my pick for this one was going to be Tactics Reborn, Tactics Org Reborn. But it's not. It ends up being another Square game, a Square game that was stranded on PSP and never had a digital store release, even on Vita. So this is Final Fantasy Crisis Core Reunion. It just came out a week ago. The cartridge has been in my Switch for the last week, and it's been running really well. But I think the fact that it takes a game that has not been playable outside of a UMD and makes it playable for modern audiences is why it is my choice for New Lease on Life. All right. So Swiss, tell us about your new lease on life, which I think is also it is probably pretty close to the same
I don't know.
age in terms of I think it's probably 2007 might be the first time that we
I'm not
get
sure.
the text based of this. So go ahead and tell us.
I just think that I nailed like both ported and new lease on life with Dwarf Fortress. So Dwarf Fortress being like the Tarn and I forget his brother's name. Two brothers basically have been making this game and getting paid in donations for the last couple of decades, really.
Yeah, it came out in 2006. So
and like basically they just made like this dwarf mine simulation like town builder game, and just kept adding to the simulation and didn't care about graphics, so it's all just like using ASCII characters. And over time, like they decided to partner with Kit Fox Games to make like a graphical, like an actual graphical interface for Dwarf Fortress, and they announced that a while back, and I've had it wishlisted on Steam, and then like a couple of weeks ago it finally hit, and I haven't had a chance to download it yet, but the the Steam reviews I think are overwhelmingly positive right now, and there's all sorts of people saying like they loved playing the game back in the day and they're so excited about playing it now, and they thought that the graphics would be nice, but like the graphics and the music have really enhanced the experience, and everybody's talking about how much fun they've had with it. So my pick for 2022 is Dwarf Fortress.
all right. So Tao, what is your pick for? And you've hinted at it already tonight. So
Yes, so my pick was one. I was actually gonna use this for the dev or publisher with the best attitude in the face of adversity, but I've used it before, and I already had to dip into the well of years past for other picks in the show today. But it was No Man's Sky on the Switch. So when this was first announced back, I don't know if it was E3 or a little bit before after that, that they were going to bring it to the Switch. I don't know if that's going to work. Like I saw, and these are different companies, but I saw what Arc was when they first brought it on. Even though they've fixed that on the Switch or tried to fix it, just how it ran, and that's just like a static. You're just on one map. Granted, there's like all kinds of animals and stuff, and you can kind of not terraform, but you can build up the build bases and stuff like that in there, and it really did not run all that well. So I was like, oh man, No Man's Sky, like there's all these different planets you can go to, and you can do base building, but you can terraform too. You can actually blow through the dirt, kind of like old style Red Faction style, or the ground and stuff. And I was like, there's no way. But I mean, from what I've played so far, and I've played a lot of it on the Switch, it runs really well. Like, yeah, it doesn't look the best. That's kind of par for the course for the Switch. But I mean, it doesn't even look like terrible either. I mean, it still looks pretty good. Sometimes, like environments are a little flat and a little muddied, but I mean, it's still a very playable game, and I'm still enjoying it now. I finally, after my little Marble Snap excursion there, now that I fit that in there, I've gone back to it too, and it's I'm still enjoying the game even on the Switch. And it's kind of nice, it's just portable. I can just play it on there. And yeah, if I had a Steam Deck, yeah, of course you could do that too, and probably look a lot better. But I don't have one, so Switch is the next best thing, I think. And I'm just it kind of renewed my interest in the game, and has pretty much, I think, all the updates. Well, it does have all the updates. There's some things that still don't work or not working right now, but hopefully in the future they'll get those going. But yeah, No Man's Sky on the Switch is my pick.
all right, so let's go from a game that was ported to Switch to a game that was released from Switch and brought out to other things. Hamp, what is your pick for New Lease on Life?
Mine is Monster Hunter Rise. The game, as you mentioned, came out on the Nintendo Switch and then was ported to PC. And then, as we've gone throughout the year, then it's gotten an expansion, right, with Sunbreak, which is also on PC. And I played the game a little bit when it was on the Switch, and then coming to PC was, an amazing experience. And, and on Switch, I don't know that I ever even completed the onboarding, right? It was just kind of a lot of what I talk about, where it just put a lot in my windshield. It also didn't do a super great job of being intuitive as far as, in fact, I think we had a rather extensive discussion when that game came out about, what my personal feelings were on, what should the design of tutorials be, right, in modern day games. But that game coming to PC, just playing it on a larger screen, having a mouse and keyboard available, just really, gave me a different perspective, right, on the game. Maybe felt like the game kind of opened up and was a little more transparent. And I'm sure some of those things are like low-level esoteric things that I probably could have gotten through on the Switch if I was just of the mind to, but I wouldn't. Yeah, I think that game showing up on PC is a nice get. I saw lots of people playing it, saw lots of people live streaming it, so definitely feels reinvigorated and freshened from my first experience with it on the Nintendo Switch.
We'll stay on the mic because we're moving into our next category with most likely to regret not playing or not playing enough of in 2022.
And it's the same pick for me, Monster Hunter Rise and more, and maybe even more specifically Sunbreak, just because I did get both of those games on PC, but just as the year has gone on, that's a big meaty game, right? That really requires you to dedicate some time and some focus to. And I just, in between, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and Halo Infinite multiplayer, right? It's the same competition that I talked about on the episode a couple of weeks ago, right? That maybe 4 episodes back, where I don't see having the time to do both. It's always a catch-22, and when you're wrapped around the axle about progressing battle passes right on games, it just doesn't give you the large swath of time that I need, to get through something like Monster Hunter Rise or Sunbreak. And that's a game. Those are games you never finish, right, in my mind, but just enough time to kind of put in like a good 8 to 16 to 24 hour kind of string together kind of campaign of your own making is just something I just haven't had the chance to do.
All right. Swiss, what is yours in terms of something that you regret not having a chance to play this year or playing enough of?
Mine is Ghostwire Tokyo, and that game I was pretty hooked when I saw the I guess it was at E3 like 2020 or 2019 or something. They had a pretty cool presentation, and it's one of these. So I'm kind of like, it's set in Tokyo and Shibuya, and so it's got this like cool X-Files-y like vibe to it, and the gameplay, like I saw some allusions to like the Yakuza franchise, and having just kind of finished Judgment, which is kind of a spin-off of that series, I'm kind of more like, I appreciate that style and just kind of the living world kind of aspect. Although I know this is a Bethesda game and it's not like a Yakuza clone or anything, but those comparisons were welcome. But it's also just one of those games that's like right there, like always second or third in the backlog. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride type thing, which is why it's on this list. I almost picked it up like on Black Friday because they had it heavily discounted, which is not surprising being a Bethesda game. But Ghostwire Tokyo.
All right. So for my pick, this is one that switched around quite a bit for me. At first, I thought I needed to do my kind of critical due diligence and look for a game that I haven't had a chance to play yet. And so I was thinking about Citizen Sleeper. And even after putting it on my mental list probably a month ago, I still never picked it up. And then I started to pick at a game that just came out last week. So it's not Citizen Sleeper. And it's not, it is, so what it ends up being is when I really thought about what I was regretting and wished I had played more of this year. It is quite simply the Steam Deck that I I did not follow through with my pre-order. And at the time, it seemed like, oh, that was just fine. And as the fall has gone on, I have wished and wanted and tried to find, but the justification, and it will probably end up being something that I do pick up in 2023. But if I think about something I regret not playing, it is quite simply the Steam Deck. And the year that the Steam Deck had has been impressive.
Now, are you saying that because you've since gone back and procured one, or are you still on the outside right now?
I am on the outside looking in, regretting not playing one. Yes. As the only Steam Deck owner on the show tonight, is that a fair assumption, or is it I mean, should I be regretting it, or is it are you having a little buyer's remorse with owning it as well?
I'm definitely not having buyer's remorse, and I will definitely say, look, when the Steam Deck came out and there were like this raucous like applaud, right, particularly by members of the media, I was like, we need to be careful, like what color, like what shade of color, right, of paint we're painting that with, right, because again, people have made this leap incorrectly to compare that product against the Nintendo Switch as if they are in the same product category, and they are most absolutely certain not. Self-administration of the Steam Deck is almost the same, very analogous to being, your self-styled sysadmin for gaming PCs, and it is not like the Nintendo Switch. Should you regret not having one?
Put you on the spot.
I'm gonna say yeah. I'm gonna say yes because my feeling is and I'm visiting the intentions of my co-host, right? I think you're a person who likes playing on PC, but my feeling is a lot of times you walk in, you look at your PC, and you're like, nope, not tonight. I don't feel like putting up with that hassle right now. And so
actually, it's probably more of nope, not tonight. My son's on it. So
okay. Well, there you go. I mean, the Steam Deck gives you that alternative, gives you that second screen, and depending on how you choose to set it up, if you get a dock, you can set it up and play it, like a PC. It has some limitations, right, in battery life, in processing power. You're gonna get some games where you're gonna, like I talked about, my experience in Uncharted 4. Where I just had to back off of the game, right, and restart it, and then everything kind of smoothed out and was fine. But you're going to get some hiccups like that probably along the way. Me personally, I'm definitely not regretting it, because one of the things it's done for me is it's opened my eyes to PC gaming on Linux, and so now I've taken, right, an old PC that I had and repurposed it, right, as a Linux gaming box, which is just a neat little kind of thing to play around with. But I don't think you regret it, and particularly as a travel device, right? Look, the Nintendo Switch is a great piece of hardware. The Steam Deck as a travel device just opens the aperture on the realm of on the art of the possible, right? If you have to take it on travel, so what I would do at this point, I might
wait for a system revision.
Yeah, just because they're talking about it now, and again, unless you're the type, like, every once in a while with cell phones, I get to this point and I'm like, I'm just going to wait. And then, but sometimes I go, no, I'm just going to buy it. And if a new thing comes out, I'm going to be able to sell this thing on eBay and recoup a lot of the money and get the new thing anyway. So fine, then I'm good to go whether a new one comes out or not. So, one of those two things I'd pitch as the mentality about it. As a gamer, I think you're, sorry to go on and on. I think you're kind of cut of this cloth too. It is a historically significant thing that's occurring on the gaming landscape right now, and to participate in it, right? From somebody particularly like you who approaches it from an educational standpoint, I think that's definitely not of zero value. And so maybe getting like the low end SKU, right, might might be a thing to do. Although
to dabble into it.
certainly
That's a whole different conversation.
yeah, I certainly recommend the high-end SKU with as much memory as you can possibly get, and then throw another 512 gigabytes of SD card in there.
Even just the solid state. But let's move on to a game that runs pretty well on the Steam Deck, and that is Tao's pick for game that he had played more of.
Yeah, so this is one I was actually looking forward to, and this is for on the PC. Is Spider-Man Remastered. I was really looking forward to this game. I really wanted to get it, but for once in my gaming life, in my gaming adult life, I figured I should be an adult and not get it just because I don't have the time to play it right now, like a single player, narrative game. I mean, I think the base probably playthrough storyline is probably pretty short. But knowing me, like I'd have to go, do side missions and just doing all these other things, and just Spider-Man games in general. Like I've always enjoyed the open world Spider-Man games, so just swinging around. Like other than the few Superman games that have come out, Spider-Man kind of gives you that freedom just to kind of go anywhere we want. So that was one of the reasons I've always liked him. But I couldn't buy it right now. So so that was my pick, Spider-Man Remastered for the PC.
All right, our next category is Hidden Gem. It is our most overlooked game. So either a hidden gem or a game that's been overlooked. And Hamp, I am very curious on how this game, your choice here, becomes an overlooked game.
I think this was me slightly modulating the category. It was a hidden gem because it wasn't planned. I was not planning. Like I had this game on PlayStation 5 already. I didn't really think of it as a necessary thing that I needed to get on PC. I also put it here though because I think a lot of PC gamers are sleeping on this game because they don't get it. But like you like. I talked about like games that exercise your graphics card, right, and that make you appreciate having high-end hardware. This is one of them, and it's I'm trying to call
Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Yes, thank you. Because I always just call it Miles Morales, but it actually has an official title. And in Tau, I would say, given its obviously similar framework to Spider-Man Remastered, I would just get it. Your reasons, I'm not going to call them invalid. I'm going to say that the wonder and joy of this game is not the campaign, right? It is the side missions. And I mean, the way I'm playing Miles Morales to collect all the costumes. Like I mentioned a few weeks ago, I play the single player campaign thing because like the stinking NPCs will just continue to nag the heck out of you until you attend to that single player mission. But like and from a mini role playing, and I talk a lot about building a story in your head aspect of games. Like if there's a thing that makes you feel like Spider-Man, swinging through the city and suddenly getting the call or the alert that something is going down that you need to attend to, right? While you think you're on your way to the Daily Bugle to like take photos, that it's an amazing resonant experience, right? Particularly for a comic book fan. So I am sure it is going to go on sale at some point in some type of Steam sale. So I would heavily recommend. Like if Miles doesn't resonate with you, definitely, I think Spider-Man, if you're a big Peter Parker fan, will do it for you as well.
The stories in both of them are great. Having them on PlayStation 4 and the the upres on PlayStation 5 has been excellent. So definitely look for a sale. Now, games that I think probably will find a sale are the next three here with the rest of us, because I have no idea what some of these are. And so, Swiss, why don't you start us off with, I'm not even sure how to pronounce the game that you chose.
Me neither. Dorf Romantic, I think. So this one I played when I was sick, which used to be a category, but I think we got rid of it. But it's like a little tile placement city builder game. So you have a stack of tiles, you pull the top one off, and I think they're like hex tiles. you have to match it. Like the edges of the tile could be like forest or plains or like a water or something, and you have to each tile you have to kind of match on to your city as you build it out with a matching side. So if you can kind of place a tile and match multiple sides at the same time, you get extra points. They have they call them quests, but it's where it's like, okay, like you'll draw a tile and it'll be like, hey, this has forest on it. If you can link up however many forests together, you get bonus points. And so you can try to do that. But it has a nice kind of artsy style, like it's like cartoony, but like a nice artistic kind of cell shaded look. And mostly it's just a super like everybody talks like all the reviews that I read and stuff talk about it as being like super like zen. It's just like it's not really pressure, but it very much taps into I'm just gonna play one more tile. I'm gonna see if I can place this next tile. And if for me this year trying to go kind of smaller in my gaming just because I don't like Tao was talking about not having time to play like get it like another big story driven epic game. For me it was like fewer of those. Like I still played like Judgment and currently playing through Death Stranding, which I thought was going to be Hamp's hidden gem before he came out with Miles Morales. But this one is like just a very much where you can just pick it up and play. And I'd be curious to see how well this game like seems like it's made for the Steam Deck as well. So it'd be definitely that style.
Thanks,
So,
Swiss. Go ahead.
One quick question: how did you find this game? Find out about this game?
I just was kind of looking up hidden gem games just to see what was small and indie out there, and
Nice.
it's like $10, $12. So
Okay, Tal, you are up next with Ready or Not.
Yeah, so this one I was debating on Marvel Snap for these two. I had them flipped. I kept going back and forth on them. But eventually, Marvel Snap, which is kind of a bigger game for me, so I did that one up at the top. But yeah, so Ready or Not was it's a tactical first-person shooter. So you're playing on a SWAT team, team of 4, and you're just going through different scenarios. And this is early access. This is an early access game. There's actually another game that I was thinking of putting on here, but I just recently started playing it. But I'll talk about that next year. We're talking about games, but another early access game. But yeah, this one kind of came as a surprise too, just because. Well, one, I just never heard of it before. It was my one friend brought it up to me, and we started playing with a bunch of our other friends. But this kind of reminded me of the old. I think I mentioned this too. Old school Rainbow Six on PC back in the day, where you kind of have to plan out what you want to do when you go into these scenarios, and you got different sort of gadgets, regular real world gadgets like mirrors, and you can like look around the corner with a mirror or underneath the door and stuff like that, and you can breach a door if you need to, or with I think they have a battering ram, which I never use, or like an explosive or something like that. So you can kind of do these different scenarios, and they're just kind of cool. Kind of go back to that style of gaming. Obviously with the upgraded graphics, and we got new gameplays and stuff like that. So it was just what a surprise, and just like kind of a hidden gem, just because I haven't really seen that type of game. At least I haven't seen that type of game lately. Mostly probably because I just started with the PC gaming again this year. But maybe it's been around, maybe it's not. I don't know. But for me, it was definitely a hidden gem.
And it looks like it is nominated for one of the Steam Awards this year as well. So it is in the Steam Awards category for Better with Friends. Ready or Not. So nice pick. Nice pick. Had not heard of it. I love the callback to like the old Rainbow Six. That's nice. All right. So my hidden gem is a small little platformer called Lumistus. It is a single developer, Grumpy Fox. It started off as kind of a game jam project. He thought it was going to be a weekend project. It turned into multiple months. It is just pure joy 3D platforming. It's $5 on Switch. there's a demo. It is well worth $5. It is very fluid. There's 7 worlds, maybe 2 levels per each, and a couple of unlockables. But it's built for speed runs as well. There's lots of hidden paths. There's some collectibles. You have just the movement is it's precise and demanding at times, but never feels cheap. That you always have multiple routes. Some levels I died 50 times trying to make a jump, but I knew what I was trying to do, and it never felt like it was user error more than it was responsiveness in the game. And so it was a fun little discovery in terms of a 3D platformer. And that is my hidden gem, Lumistis. All right. Now we are moving into family game night. Most likely for a family game night, Lumistis is about a fox. So let's stay in the feline family, maybe, Hamp, and let's take your pick for a family game night.
Are foxes I thought they were canines.
Yeah, I know it's a stretch.
It was still good though. I will take that away from you.
Segue. I was trying.
It's getting late in the show. We're down to the last 3 categories. I will. We got to let you have that one. So my pick was Stray.
Got a tail and ears. Okay.
My pick was Stray, which I don't know how I would make this a family game night since I played it on PC, and I don't have a PlayStation 5 or Xbox upstairs. Is Stray on Nintendo Switch? Or no. So, hopefully it makes sense that game would be on the Switch at some point. But the way my kids play, they don't. They've definitely turned the corner this year into playing, but they have historically, been just as occupied by watching me play a game. And so Stray is kind of one of those things where I could see, again, kind of sitting down to play it and letting them kind of backseat game and tell me where to go and kind of would enjoy seeing that story unfold. So that was my pick.
Nice. Thank you. So Swiss, I just talked about Lumistis as being a low budget, low polygon 3D platformer. You've got a bigger budget, bigger polygon pick for your family game night. And I think I remember even some family pictures celebrating the completion of this game over the course of the year as well.
So I picked Kirby and the Forgotten Land for the Nintendo Switch. And yes, you're alluding to the fact I 100% completed this game. I was doing a contest in another Discord server and I won, so I won a Kirby ramen bowl, which was super popular, but I immediately put it on a high shelf because I'm not going to let my kids destroy it. But it's my trophy for playing Kirby. It may have been aided. I might have had like a fever for a couple of days, so I was able to take time off work and just sit in bed with the Switch, but I beat it. Later on, during that playthrough, though, my kids were watching me play quite a bit and cheering me on. And when I 100% completed it, I did have one of them pose with the screen. But it was more than just me playing it. My other kids were like super into it as well. And you can do co-op, so they'd pair up and play through sometimes, and then sometimes they'd play solo. But as far as like a family game night, like one of my good memories from this year is just like basically my 4-year-old playing and dominating against one of the bosses, Goromondo, and my wife and I and all his brothers and sisters are cheering him on while he's beating the boss, and he beats the boss and he gets all excited. He was super excited. Everybody's clapping for him. So it's we really came together the spring around Kirby and the Forgotten Land. So
nice. I enjoyed playing that with my sons as well. It was a fun game, fun co-op piece there. And I thought in August, Multiverses would end up being my family game night for the way that my kids got so excited about it, but it trailed off so quickly for them. But the game that we came back to as a family since its release over time, Thanksgiving holiday, I'm sure we'll play it again here at Christmas time, is the same game that you have, Tao, which is Switch Sports. So why did you put Switch Sports as your family game night?
So that was one. We don't play a lot of games together as a family. Like Halo was one I mentioned in the past, and I think I've had this as a game here. So we've played that obviously, but obviously I wanted to pick something that came out this year. And fortunately, Switch Sports did come out, and we have played that quite a lot. Actually, me and my wife a little bit, and my son when it first came out, and then my son had actually picked it up again like about a month or so ago. So we kind of play it off and on, going forward too with that. And then actually I had a family come over, every now and then, and we busted out with them just because we used to do the Switch, not Switch. We used to do the Wii Sports back in the day, which we kind of broke that out again not too long ago. So we kind of switched between the two, no pun intended, and we have a lot of fun with those games, and I've always had a lot of fun with those. It's kind of simple, sports games, and I've always just enjoyed those ones, and I had a lot of fun actually going back to Wii Sports, surprisingly, just because I really missed the baseball game. That was a really I hope they add that. I know they added the golf, I think, this past month or so, and hopefully that'll be another game that they add to Switch Sports, because it was a decent game. You don't have to worry about the outfield, the running and all that kind of base running stuff. It's all automatic, just all pitching and hitting. So it was kind of nice just to kind of obviously I like, I've talked about MLB The Show, and I like that game, but it's kind of nice just to kind of have a simplified game, just, when you're playing with family and friends and stuff.
All right, Tao, stay on the mic, because our next category is Life of the Party, Most Fun. So oftentimes this ends up being one of our favorite games of the year. Not necessarily our game of the year for artistic reasons, but more so for kind of overall experience. And Tao, you had Switch Sports here again as well.
Yeah, so once again, this would be the life of the party, like literally, in the literal sense, because like I just mentioned, we busted it out, when I had family over, and like I said, we just have a good time. So that was my, not to go too far into it, because that's pretty simple, but Switch Sports once again.
All right, so let's stay on the Nintendo track, and Swiss, you've got a game that you mentioned a little bit earlier in the podcast as well as, but now this is your Life of the Party Most Fun.
Splatoon 3. So this could have easily been like a, family game night game as well. The Splatoon series is very popular in the Swiss household. But we like watching each other play, and just for the same reason that, for the comic relief, like it's just kind of a fun, cheerful, somewhat silly game. I mean, when you really kind of take a step back and look at the components of it. But the other nice thing about it is it has a competitive side too. So if you're competitive, it's fun to get in there, and sometimes it's not so fun. You get frustrated, but overall, it's just, I think, one of the top games for my family this year.
All right, Hamp, you are up next. I'm curious on how this game becomes your most fun of the year.
So I picked another game that I mentioned earlier tonight. Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. I'm not a big, huge third-person action adventure fan, but one of the things that I do like/love when I do fall head over heels for a game like that is fluidity of motion. And kind of one of the jokes that I made, I've mentioned on this podcast before, like one problem with games that are in this vein from a design perspective is they have this incredible nirvana that's met when you are executing moves in combat and everything strings together smoothly, like flow to flow to flow to flow. And then you mess up, right? Then you have a moment where you hit a wall, right? Or you do some move that doesn't work out, right? And I've talked about this with Mirror's Edge, right? And I've talked about this with other games where your whole flow just gets broken. And sometimes, right, if it's in the midst of combat, you just kind of crumble and fall apart, right? Miles Morales especially does a thing where when those moments happen, it doesn't have that impact, right? You still just flow chain to the next thing, and it all just comes off feeling like you're in a comic book, right? Or in Into the Spider-Verse, and it's really particularly amazing that I don't know what special sauce they put into like the collision detection or whatever happens in the animation when that occurs, but nothing breaks that nirvana of combat in Miles Morales. And it's just an amazing feeling. And that, I mean, this category often, we often say, pick this category or some other category that's representative of kind of your game of the year. If you don't have a different game of the year. And for me, when I talk about, all the things that I've played, this game in particular, but specifically this game on PC, hits a level of fidelity that just rises kind of above everything else that I've played. Uncharted 4 was up there pretty close to on PC. But, for me, Miles Morales kind of walks away with it.
I can appreciate that as someone who loved Miles Morales on PlayStation 4. Yes, very much that state of flow. And thank you so much for setting me up with some great language there, right? State of flow, Nirvana. I maybe it's Skatevana for me, but Ali World is my most fun. It's my game of the year. It's a game that I enjoyed heavily when it first came out. I have come back to it on and off just to do a few runs here and there. Not, what I've realized when I've come back to it is it takes a while to get back into that flow, but even just going back to some of the easier levels and trying some different moves that I had unlocked later on, or realistically, they were always unlocked. I just learned about them later on. It has been just such a fun game, and being able with the 2 DLCs that have come out over the course of the year. I haven't picked up the second one yet, but it's on sale now, so I'll probably end up picking up the second one. But it has just been, it was a game that stylistically really resonated for me. Gameplay wise, it was a place that I could just find a lot of fun, and it was a game that I could sit down and play with my son and I, and kind of pass the controller back and forth as we were trying to unlock and get past or get that perfect run, as you were talking about, Hamp. So Ali World is my most fun of the year.
Quick question. What systems did you guys play it on?
I played it on PlayStation 5.
PlayStation 5. Okay. Have you played on PC?
I played it everywhere. So
you played it?
I think I started on PC. I have since, then probably went to Xbox next, then played it on Nintendo Switch, right? Because I talked about how well it played in handheld mode, and then played it on Steam Deck. And I think the only place I didn't play it on was PlayStation 5. But yeah, just pretty amazing experience, amazing handheld experience, even on the go. So yeah, it's a great pick. Great pick, DB.
Thanks. So our final category, gentlemen, is most likely to still be playing next year. In the year 2023, what are we still most likely to be playing? Looking back on this over the past couple years, sometimes it's a big game that we missed this year. Sometimes it's a game with a long tail, the live service game that we knew that we were going to be invested in. Sometimes it's a game that we've already purchased some battle passes to that we know we want to try to recoup our money out of. Last year, my pick was a little snarky, where it was throwing some shade at Forza Horizon 5, saying that I would probably play Hot Wheels Unleashed more in the next year, which is actually true. I have. But this year, I just am being realistic with myself and saying that the game or games that I will end up playing the most of and still be playing throughout next year are sports games. They're going to be Madden, NBA 2K23, and probably PGA 23. which I just picked up over, Black Friday. Haven't even had a chance to play into it yet, but I know that sports games are in my weekly rotation, oftentimes in my nightly rotation, depending on if I'm playing in a league with others. And so that is my pick. And I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Hamp, because I feel like we're in a similar mindset here.
Yes, you do. But as I am so often to do, I gotcha. I've made a last minute change.
Ooh, okay.
And my pick for most likely this will be playing in 2023 is actually, as one might suspect, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. So this
is what we might suspect. I was more surprised that you put a bunch of sports games down.
And so that's why DB had me next up. In walking up to finalizing my picks here and then submitting them to DB. So I originally had F122 on here, and then in the time span between putting that down as my pick and then the day I was making my submission, I'd added NBA 2K23. I'd started playing MLB The Show 22 on PS5. But in the last 24 hours, and through that, I was unenamored with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
You had kind of gotten turned off with NBA 23 over the last couple of weeks.
No, I was okay. I was okay with NBA 2K23. But in the last 24 hours with Modern Warfare 2, what I've found is I think kind of like the same thing. There's certain aspects of Halo Infinite that I don't think that you get, like what 343 Industries' plan is, right, or intention is, until you play a lot of that game. And it's kind of the same way with Modern Warfare 2. What I realize now, and then I think about like the fact that we're not getting a Modern Warfare next year or a Call of Duty, is Modern Warfare 2 is built for the long haul. And what I foresee now as that game unfolds through next year is there are so many weapons platforms and so many like rivulets to run down. What you're going to wind up having is you're going to wind up having more variety of combat arms. I think in any given multiplayer match, right? You're not going to have everyone running around with as many similar weapons, because some of those weapons then branch off into a specific variant that takes you more time, right? And so at least for a little while, that is going to be stretched out, and I think it's going to provide a longer period of variance than we saw with Black Ops Cold War. And so as I'm starting to put together different loadouts and whatnot, I think I'm starting to get it. And so I look forward to it. I've been putting, more time in. I don't think I'm going to put as much time in as Black Ops Cold War. But I'm definitely going to put in, I'm definitely going to be playing through next year,
I think that is an honest assessment of your gameplay style. So yes, I'm glad that it made its way back into your hearts and your hands. So Swiss, chances are yours is not a Call of Duty game, but it is one we've talked about quite a bit on the show already. And you've already alluded to the fact that you probably should break the shrink wrap on it at least.
Yes, I picked God of War Ragnarok. I did say that like this year I've kind of gone smaller with my gaming, but I still do love, like, mostly due to time. Doesn't mean I want to eliminate these big tentpole single player experiences. It's just I don't have as much. I can't have as many of them. But God of War is probably going to be the one that I definitely make an effort to complete. And when I play games like this, I'm kind of like Tao. I have to play through the story, but I have to go get all the side quests, and I want to unlock all the weapons and whatnot. So I imagine I'll be playing a lot of God of War throughout 2023.
I want to ask, just so it's a game that you have now. You got to break the shrink wrap on it. You're probably going to get into it over the holidays, but in February, there's going to be a game that comes out that's going to occupy a lot of your time. So I'm wondering how you plan on getting around that particular nit.
February? What was the release in February?
Octopath Traveler 2.
Oh, well, the problem with Octopath Traveler 2 is that I haven't finished Octopath Traveler 1.
Maybe Maybe a bandwidth thing. Hopefully Swiss
That
will
could
be
be.
back.
Well, he just took himself out of the running after admitting that he hasn't finished Octopath Traveler 1. But I don't think you need to finish Octopath Traveler 1 to play Octopath Traveler 2. So we'll see if Swiss comes back in. There's a lot of games coming out here in that January to the end of the fiscal year, kind of end of March window that we should definitely have. There'll be, I would guess, a number of conversations that we'll be having about a number of those releases. Swiss, if you're back.
Sorry. Yeah, I know that they're not like, it's not going to be sequential, but it does affect my OCD not to complete Octopath Traveler 1 before I do 2. I don't know what happened. Like, Discord's like anti-Octopath Traveler or something and decided to just crash on me. But there's that. There's also a big game coming out in May that I imagine will be occupying a lot of time for Casa de Swissguard. So, yeah, we'll see how much progress I make in God of War before those hit.
All right, Tao. I toyed with this one as well. Chances are, if I look at my total playtime, I have spent the most time in 2022 playing this game, even though it just came out in October. Even if I just uninstalled it from my phone and only have it on a tablet, I know that over holiday break, it's going to be back on my phone. There's no doubt about it. So, Tao, tell me why this is your game that you know you're going to put just as much time into in 2023 as it hooked you in 2022.
Yeah, as much as this game frustrates me at times, and we've talked about this the last couple of weeks. I just keep playing it mostly because I think it's because of the collection part of it. And that's Marvel Snap I'm talking about. So I'll end the show as I have begun it. And it's you got the different variants for every card, pretty much every card I think out there. You have the little chibi guys, you have baby versions, you have 16-bit versions of them. You have kind of some old school like kind of 70s 80s covers that I've seen here and there, which is kind of cool. There's just all these different variants, and even though like the variants are just the same, they have the same abilities as the regular cards that you get initially. It's just that kind of collection aspect of it that I kind of enjoy, just like when I was collecting comics itself, I wanted to kind of have these books and read them, and the art's cool. I mean, I really like some of the art that they use. I just mentioned the different art styles, so, and hopefully at some point they'll probably hopefully bring other variants out there, and you can just get these variants in game. I don't have to. I could pay money or gold to buy variants in the store, but I can just save up my money within as I'm playing it, and get them when I want to. So just be patient. There's plenty of cards and to play with, so it's not a big deal that I have to get a certain variant or anything like that. So, and if I really do want something, I will just I'll just save up my gold. I've done that already with a couple. I really like the 16-bit style, the variants of the cards. I just like that older kind of old school look. Some of them are better than others. Definitely, some of the ones that don't work are like Captain America, and they kind of look like he has like a huge head. But some are, like I said, some are better than others. But and it's kind of cool to see some of the newer characters that maybe I had never saw like in that kind of 16-bit a video game like back in the day that they might have had. But it's just an overall, I'm really enjoying the game and just everything it's offering. And when it comes out with multiplayer, hopefully within the first quarter or so, hopefully we can play DB. We can battle.
I'm pretty sure we will. So,
Yeah.
Gentlemen, that wraps up our categories. But I want to open the mic up just to see if there's any other honorable mentions, something that you want to give a shout out to for looking back on over the course of the year in terms of a game to highlight.
I do have one thing that I've been doing these last few months. Games that I've finished. At least I've finished a playthrough of them, or watching the playthroughs of them, which is Alien Isolation, The Last of Us. There's one more. I've just been watching YouTube videos of these playthroughs of these games that I'll probably never play. Like, obviously I don't have a PlayStation, so I can't play The Last of Us. I could get on PC, I guess, but watching somebody play that game I realized, yes, it's a very good story. It's like probably one of the better stories I've seen play out. But the gameplay just seemed kind of boring to me because it's just kind of like stealthy play, more or less. Like, if you wanted to like,
Are you
jump
talking
into
about Alien Isolation or
Last of Us? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Alien Isolation 2, which I knew what that game was, but Last of Us I didn't realize that it was kind of a more stealthy game. I mean, yeah, you could go in and just start shooting people and hitting people with arrows and stuff, but it seemed like you were better off trying to do like those, sneaky takedowns and trying to just go around people or clickers, or I forgot what the general term for all those, because there's more variety than just the clickers, I think. So I've been doing a lot of that, and I'll just find like somebody that I can, bear to watch, I guess. Like sometimes there is commentary from the people playing the games, but it's kind of few and far between with the one guy I've been watching lately. And so I've been kind of finishing games that way that maybe I wouldn't normally like finish a game or even play. So it's kind of a different way to go through a story and go through a game.
Any other final thoughts, gentlemen?
I have a weird gaming. Well, for me, it's a strange gaming experience this year, and this was the first year that I actually watched esports regularly. We were following very, very closely League of Legends Worlds, and to the point where I was like rushing home in order to watch the championship live, and which you would have told me that at the beginning of 22, I probably would have mocked you, but we really got into that. The DRX one, it was a cool underdog story, and for someone that is very used to like watching professional sports, but had never really watched esports, it was very interesting to see and compare and contrast like the presentations of the two, and just enjoying the competition.
All right. Swiss, thank you for joining us tonight. Hamp and Tao, thank you very much for all of your contributions over the course of the year, and for the consistency, Hamp, in terms of running those wheels of steel and keeping us moving and making us both live but also accessible at any point in time. For the Enough to Keep Going podcast, this has been episode 271. We're going to take a 2-week break here and observe the Christmas and New Year's holiday. So we'll be back at the early part of January. So for myself, TomMaster99, Hamp, and Swissguard, this has been Enough to Keep Going, Superlative Show of 2022. Thank you all for being here with us over the course of the year, jumping in and out when you can. And hopefully we've given you some games to consider, to stay away from, and to savor. So have a good night and take care.